Commander Brown, Detroit Urban Survival Training. My fellow Americans, I have something to say that we all need to hear, and that is that protection is the highest form of love. And we will always protect what we love. We need to love all humanity, literally and figuratively. That means we need to look at all people as our human family, and we need to protect them accordingly. We need to find ways to use protection over prosecution when we think of ways in order to keep ourselves and our community safe. And what we do here in Detroit is live that way. We create safety safely. And we want to share that with you, the world. In our country, no more than ever before in history, we now need a new way. And that new way is positivity, protection, and the love of humanity. And the way we do that is, again, create conditions where violence does not occur. Find ways to treat people in a positive way, but not allow negative things to happen by them or to them by creating a safe society. And the way to do that is to not focus on how we use force and violence, but how we use love and the idea that we need to keep people safe, all people, just like we keep ourselves safe. And in doing so, we can find strategies to create motivation, not to intimidate, not to use intimidation, but to use inspiration. By using inspiration, we can change human behavior for the better and create a safer, successful society for everyone. Thank you.
Wow, wow, wow. The legendary Dale Brown, Commander Dale Brown, is in studio with us again via Zoom, but we are happy. We're going to have to come up there and see you there in Detroit because I know what you're
Yes.
doing is making shockwaves around the world. Thank you, sir, for coming on and thank you for that address.
Thank you for having me. Great to see you again. It's been some years.
Yes, we started off. I remember back in the podcast radio days, starting off just many years ago. We were talking to talking to you, Dale, before it was cool. But now you've become kind of a viral sensation, and we always love
Yes.
to check in with you and see what you're up to. So, uh, how do you see this country? Let's start off. You gave us your address. How do you see the state of safety today in America? I mean, you're here in Detroit, where there's tremendous concerns for safety. We hear about it all the time, and yet you're in the heart of it. And yet you're also being able to make a presence in other places around the country and maybe expand what you're doing to other places. So as you look at crime, as you look at the level of, let's say, trust, the best of America is its high trust elements when we trust each other as neighbors and we don't have this suspicious, paranoid, irritated, ready to pop off attitude.
Yes.
Knowing that is when we're at our best, we have that high trust. Where are we at today in this country?
Well, it's interesting that you bring that up because that's very important to understand that the neighbor and you and your community, this is the key to success of any society. It is how we interact with our neighbors, our own family, of course, and the community at large that creates the conditions, positive or negative, based on our behavior. And
Right.
what I can tell you, after 30 years of being a civilian, private entity, protecting communities and corporations both, and doing free services for the poor, we protect poor people that are in danger. These are people that have been sent to us by police officers, police administrative people that know their situations that are complex and require assistance for serious violent situations, for protection, not for law enforcement. Police do not send people to us for law enforcement, but protection is separate from law enforcement, and we can talk about that as well. Um, these are advocate groups and organizations, shelters, domestic violence shelters. We protect all those people for free because we look at people as family. If that was my sister, my mother, my grandmother, my family, in some cases, men and women and their children that are in danger, we protect them for free. We don't take money from poor people and protect them because someone wants to kill them. We protect people that are in danger for free. We do not work for free for the wealthy and the rich. They don't want that anyway. They want successful professional engagement on a long-term contract. And so that's what we do for communities and corporations. And what I can tell you is your biggest threat to a community and a corporation is the people that are in the community and the corporation. So yes, we deal with threats on the outside, but most of the biggest threats, the most serious threats, most violent threats for every corporation, as well as every community, has been the people that live there and work there. So when we think about threats to ourselves and our families, we need to remember the biggest threat is someone we know, not someone we don't know. Stranger danger is minimal in the United States. The majority of our danger is in someone that we're acquainted with, someone in our family, someone in our neighborhood, someone that's a friend, someone that's a relative. That's your biggest threat to your family. The same is true inside of a corporation. So the if you look back in our history of our country's evolution, you'll see that corporations have always had serious problems with employees and with competition. So again, these are people they know. So it's not like there's some strange terrorist group that comes along and is really focused on destroying your community or your corporation. That is our internal issue. And I learned this the hard way because I used to think it was external forces as well. But as I'm protecting communities, me, civilian, required to create a legally justifiable outcome under all conditions. And because I'm private sector, there's no reward for violence. Try to create an entire educational system that is completely counterintuitive to what I was taught as a martial artist and in the military. It's a whole new way of looking at humanity, and it's in line with business as well. So, love of humanity and prosperity are literally connected, and we're living that way. So the reason why we're successful in Detroit and why we're going to take this same message I developed over the past 30 years for other cities, states, and countries is because we now know how it works and we can teach it. And that's what we're doing to communities and corporations because we learned how to manage issues in communities and corporations that are extreme, such as home invasions. Um, People are targeting people for murder. A lot of times that comes from, and believe it or not, I did not know this 30 years when I started. Um, when someone dies in the families will go crazy over their assets, rich families and poor families. And I mean insane, violent, vile. Um, so that's something I've learned is that when people pass, that is some of your most dangerous time periods in every family, like most families. It's a
Yeah.
very common occurrence.
That goes
People
back
are
to the
normally
tribe.
civilized.
That goes back to our tribal days when the chieftain passes. There's a struggle for power about who's going to get the pigs and who's going to get
Yes,
the land
that's
or
right.
whatever. Who's going to be
That's right.
the top dog? So is that? Do you see? Or do you have a low view of human nature, having done the work that you've done and seen the level of evil and pettiness, or do you have a? Where do you stand on that?
Well, it's interesting because I stand on both sides. So because I see both extremes. I see both situations. I see the positive in love, and I see the negative in aggression and violence.
Yeah.
Right. So, 6 of my team members have been shot over the past 30 years, and every shooting I looked at as a chance to learn. None of our people died. We stabilized our wounded and transported them to level one trauma hospitals. And the time we didn't, we learned we better because the ambulance was not timely or appropriate in their response. So we had to make sure that we knew medically how to treat our staff members, but the public as well. So we've protected people have been shot. I literally had to keep a guy alive. He been shot 7 times across across his chest and another few times in his extremities. And we kept him alive. And the ambulance came there and then transported him to the hospital. And he's alive now. And
Wow.
so we don't care, who the people are. We don't just work for the rich. That's who funds us. We're
Yeah.
funded privately. So we're funded by those who are going to benefit. We make rich people richer by creating more customers because if there's more people alive, they can buy more things. They can have a better quality of life. So the city gets more taxpayers. The rich people get more customers, and we get almost no credit, which is fine, because at the end of the day, what we want is to help create societal change. And once
Yeah.
you see that, you'll realize what you can do in your community, with your corporation, with your community, to change the narrative. We don't need to keep doing the same thing we see does not work and try to create a different outcome, but it can't because we already know that. The more force and violence you use on people, the more they fight back. The reason why the United States is not speaking with a British accent right now And the reason why we don't salute a king and queen is because of the force and violence they were using
Right.
on the citizens in our country. Let's
So
be clear
it creates a
that
reciprocal blowback, right? It's a mere
yes,
reciprocity.
yes,
Yes.
that's what human nature is, right? What
What
goes around comes around.
interesting. It's interesting. I had a discussion with a guy about this recently, a friend of mine on the show, and he was saying, well, yes, there are times where, um, violence does beget violence, but sometimes you can use overwhelming force and literally just subdue the opponent and their population to the point of complete submission, and that sometimes is called for. Do you believe in that, or do you think that's true, that
No, absolutely
sometimes?
not. Absolutely not. The only time that you can do that is if you're committing genocide and you have to kill all of the adults and you have to subjugate the children and you have to make them your children and you have to make their children your children. So you have to breed them. That's the only way you're going to create that outcome.
Right.
So throughout history, the only way that you dominate a population is by outbreeding them. So that means you're going to force your DNA into these people. You're going to force them to speak Spanish or English historically, right? So they got there. And you're going to do it through extreme violence and genocide. Otherwise, it's never going to happen. And they will have their freedom. Those people will be free if you don't do that. So those are people that do not gain their freedom. People truly do not want it because they actually have the DNA of those that forced their ancestry to become a different person. And so now they're even proud of the land they live in and the Spanish they speak or the English they speak, no matter where they are. And they were subjected to this abuse during colonial behaviors, right? That took over subjugated communities. But the only way the subjugation happened was genocide and um, I call it um, eugenics through non-consensual
Yeah.
contact.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
So the reason why people allow themselves to become a person with a different religion than their ancestors is they were forced to by someone who became their ancestor against their will.
That's what they say
That's
happened to the Neanderthal community, that
yeah,
they were just
yeah,
completely systematically wiped off the face of the earth,
correct. But clearly,
Uh,
we can see some people look just like them and act just like them. So that means their DNA is still here. There's
so they will
still
rise
the DNA
again
is
one
still
day.
present.
They will rise again.
Well, they can't really rise again, really, because now they've been subjected. They've been their descendants have been um, uh, subjected to a new way of thinking,
Yeah.
like bathing,
But wait till they get
things
a
like
hold
that.
of that lawsuit against Geico for making fun of them all those years and get some.
Right, exactly.
Now,
Geico's going to learn.
I was thinking about when you were saying that, corporations hire you to protect their interests from rogue actors. We've seen in the news over and over again, folks of these extremist climate activists. They're throwing paint and oil and stuff all over like famous works of art, like Mona Lisa and stuff like that. Have you seen this? I would like to know, how would you assess that situation? How would you stop? I'm sure if there's one person who can stop Mona Lisa from getting destroyed, it would be you if you were hired for those museums. So how would you deal with? Would you be looking around for that guy with the little bucket of paint? I mean, how do you stop that paint from flying onto Mona Lisa's face?
You make sure that Mona Lisa is covered by Lexan glass, so it can't be shot, stabbed, or anything else, as well as painted. And then you now create safety safely.
Yeah.
You can enjoy it without having physical access to it, like many things in our society. So when we create access to children in a school, for example, there's going to be a chance we created that someone can come there and shoot the children. However, if we made the children safe, like we do flight attendants on an airplane, you'd have the same outcome. Why don't we have stories of flight attendants on the airplanes getting shot, but we have school teachers getting shot? We have kids getting shot. We don't have passengers on airplanes getting shot because we prevent the conditions, not because we have super shooters on the plane, not because we respond really fast and go shoot the people in the school, in the plane. We don't let people with guns and bombs on planes. So if you don't want problems, you have to prohibit the contact between the would-be aggressor and their target.
Yeah.
And that's what it is. Prevention is everything. That's what we call our training system preventive threat management. So what I teach at my school is preventive threat management. So we're out protecting what's now 10,000 families in Detroit, approximately, all over Detroit. There's no community we don't work in. We work in very extremely rich and extremely poor communities. We don't care, what the conditions are. Our goal is to do one thing, and that's to save lives and do it safely.
So what if you're so how does your model work? Let's say I'm a low income or middle class and I want to have your protection services in Detroit. How would I do that? Like how does that work? If I'm not rich and
Mm-hmm.
I'm not at the I'm not homeless, but I'm just right in that little spot where everybody gets forgotten. So how do you get that
Right.
kind of support? How would I inquire for your services?
For families, we have a very basic policy. It's $10 a month for membership in the program, and it's $10 per call. And anything over 10 minutes is $1 a minute. And 99% of all things are solved under 10 minutes. So, it's a suspicious person, a suspicious person in your backyard, suspicious person in the front yard, a suspicious person sitting outside your house in a vehicle, on the streets, on public streets. So you have to know a legal way in which you can interact with people without questioning them. We're civilians. We can't go up and Terry stop people. We can't ask them for ID on public streets. And 99% of the time we work on public streets. We don't we have private communities as well, gated communities. But 90% of the people that we protect are on public streets. And we do this 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And we have no lawsuits. We have no problematic issues with law enforcement or the enforcement of laws because we work with law enforcement. And what we do typically is create a very positive statistical environment for them. In other words, their stats show lower crime because of our actions and no legal issues. So we don't have any legal pushback. So there's not like we're creating a deleterious panacea, right? So people have these concepts. There's a problem. We're going to throw a bunch of money at it and then attack it with more problematic conditions and then see if something good happens. That's not going to work. What you have to do is a whole different methodology to create a different outcome. And so what we do, instead of figure out who did a crime, we don't let them do the crime. So that just takes a different mindset. And believe it or not, law enforcement had this mindset at the turn of the century in the early 1900s. But what happened was they needed a metrics that was based upon doing something that also turns out to generate money.
Yeah.
So when people talk about defunding police, for example, it is impossible to defund the city police in any city because the city is funded by the police.
Right.
So in every city, when you spend money on a police department, Detroit, 500 million, well, guess what they get in tickets for the city? Probably 200 million. Excuse me, probably 1 billion. So you're in New York City, it's even larger because they have a $1 billion budget. So they're making billions off of the people that they're enforcing laws against. Now, I don't agree with that system. I believe we should have a non-financial system based protective infrastructure, and we should not have criminal justice programs or criminal justice because we should have justice. Why do we need criminal justice when we don't have justice?
Right.
How can we have? Why do we have a criminal justice program for people in college, but we don't have a non-criminal justice program?
Yeah. Well, I mean,
We should have just a
yeah.
justice program.
I think you would agree with me. I mean, what would happen if we legalized a lot of these nonviolent crimes in Detroit? I mean, you would see a lot of these situations of gangs would just collapse, right? They don't have their financial incentive now if there's not a market for an underground, trade that gives you this huge profit margin because the demand is still there, but the suppliers have been limited to the black market. You're not gonna have you're not gonna have the financial stream to create violent gangs or violent behavior as much. It's just not. It would collapse a lot of it.
No.
That's what happened in Tampa when the alcohol
Yeah.
prohibition. Remember, alcohol
Yeah.
prohibition was big in
Yeah.
Tampa.
Yeah. But prohibition in general only affects the government and their officials. So when you look at violent criminals like gangs, now there's different kinds of gangs, right? But in general, gangs are not economic organizations. Gangs are familial, right? Except in Detroit, they're uh, uh, more of a social program. So they're not related to money. So they have no money at all. In fact, Detroit's gang populations are extremely dangerous because of money. If there was no money, they could be a lot more reliable to each other, a lot more capable of functioning with each other. But because of money, and it's so much of it, from all the illicit things they're doing that should not be illegal, to your point, they should not be illegal, such as two adults consenting to sex. That's a big thing. So the underage part, yeah, we need to stop that. 100% focus on that, right? But here, it's they still really dress up law enforcement officers to stop men, typically, but not just men, from purchasing time period where they will have agreed upon um, sexual contact, and people are dying. So there's actually situations where police officers have lost their lives on these stings to find out if a person is paying for um, a time for sex with a person that they've agreed to have sex with, which is insane if you think about it. Like, we're losing lives over this, and to your point, uh, marijuana was a big thing in Detroit. I mean, this was raids all day, raids of every place. I mean, every kind of raid you can imagine, and now that's over. So um, there's no more raiding. There's no more weed related raiding, which cut down a lot of the raids. And so now, if you were doing a lot of raids before, you're just not doing them anymore. It's like right, but for the gangs, um, they just had to switch to a different thing. Like they can't do marijuana because, well, they do a small amount of marijuana, right? So they're still in business, but
Yeah,
it's
they still
small.
do it
They
because of
about
the
it.
taxes
Yeah,
and everything for legal marijuana still allows for a market to undercut. It's just not as big and lucrative
yeah, that's
anymore.
true. That's true.
That's how it
That's true. And
works.
also,
Yeah.
yeah, and then also because a lot of those people have felonies, they wouldn't let felons own a marijuana place, no matter how much money you had. So you had a felony, for whatever it was. Now they won't let you sell the drugs legally, but you were selling it illegally. But now,
Right.
yeah, it's a giant mess. That part's a mess, and uh, it does generate a lot of interest. So a lot of the gangs, to your point, although it wouldn't make them disappear, it would cause a lot of membership to drop because you wouldn't have the economic incentives to draw in the interest. And then when people think about gangs, they think about poor people or something, right? Um, so a lot of the gang members are extremely well educated. I know some that were graduates from the University of Michigan with bachelor's and master's degrees in business, and they use that knowledge combined with illegal activities, which our country has a history of doing, not just the Kennedys with an island off the
Yeah.
coast of Maine
Yeah.
and and the alcohol that's now
Yeah.
legal that made them wealthy as a family, right? But these people are highly educated. Now their minions are not that educated. They're street guys, right? But let me explain that the there's a lot of these people and they're highly educated and they are intertwined with every part of our society. So you might know them as a car dealership. You
Yeah.
might know them as the owner of real estate and a lawyer, but you don't know he's also a gang member leader. He's not a minion. He is a decision maker. But
Yeah.
you know him as a church leader, pastor of a church, and he is a pastor of a church. But he's also a member of an
Yeah.
illicit organization that sells. In one case, this guy had a gospel album
Yeah.
uh, uh, le- uh, label here in Michigan. He
Yeah.
was distributing heroin throughout North America. His house was like $10 million in Michigan. A $10 million house is like a $50 million house in Florida.
Wow. Wow.
Okay, so this guy had a gigantic mega church. He had all these people he sent through college. He was doing all these great things, right, while selling heroin to a million people.
Right.
So my point is that you would not know that he was also this other guy, right? You were thinking he's just this pastor of a church,
Right.
very successful, and not paying taxes with his church money. But churches often are attractive to people in those kinds of illicit organizations, either to run them or to partner with them because they can wash the money at the church.
Yeah. What did you think about that recent story of Sheldon Johnson, who was on Joe Rogan's show, criminal justice reform advocate, and then they just arrested him, found body parts, he chopped up somebody and killed somebody in his apartment. Did you see that? I just
No, oh my God,
Yeah,
that's
he was a
crazy.
major criminal justice reform advocate, and then he was sentenced to 50 years. he decided to turn his life around. He went on Rogan's, and then they found a guest with they found a man's body parts all chopped up in his freezer. So, what happens
Wow.
there in that situation where someone goes? I mean, is it because they were in prison for so long, or what's going on that they decide they've got their freedom back and they decide to chop somebody up into pieces? I mean, that's a heck of a
Well,
return.
I mean, it's, what is we don't get the stories. We don't understand
Yeah,
why. Notice they don't interview people anymore. Remember back in the old days, they would actually go talk to Jeffrey Dahmer,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
right?
Why don't they do
That
that
kind of helps you.
anymore?
They don't because the narratives. We're selling narratives. Okay, so CNN used to actually go out there and go, "Hey, crowd, what do you think about what we're doing in your country right now?"
Yeah,
And they're like, Octo Bush" in Arabic, right?
yeah,
And that means kill.
yeah, yeah,
Right? But the CNN person was like, "Look how happy they are that we're here. Look how happy they are." So, and all they're yelling is "Kill Bush, kill America," and he didn't know that. So that's an example of why we don't talk to criminals anymore, because you'll start looking at it like, "Oh, this is not what we thought it was." Right? Imagine we talk to the criminal, for example, this guy, and then you find out the guy being chopped up was a guy who was accused of attacking, 20 kids in different states. Then you're like,
yeah,
oh,
yeah,
wait a minute. Or this guy, raped his sister, or whatever. I mean, it's what I say is I don't agree with chopping up people and putting them in the refrigerator. I'm gonna say it first. Number one, you should not do that. But I need to hear the story, like what's
right.
this about. Now, he could just be a psychopath that was doing this his whole life, and the reason to be for justice reform was to cover up his tracks.
Yeah,
So you always want to look at the origin of why someone's doing something to see the logic of their path, right?
right.
What is the reason you're doing this? Where did you come from? What's the ideation that built
Yeah,
this pathway to where you are now? And what you'll find is that some of the weakest reasons, right, are the problem. They didn't. That's not real. That's the fantasy version. It doesn't really make sense to you. Like, oh, so you thought you should get involved in that because you saw something on a cartoon or on TV or something. And like, yeah, that's a $1 billion empire.
yeah,
Now, if you did more research, you find out there's something else. Like he's this person, he or she is actually a con artist, and they're about to con billions of dollars out of people. But
right.
because they speak the jargon or look the way they do it, they're able to do that. My point is
Yeah,
to always look past the surface. Always look past the surface. Now, when I look at
yeah,
situations, I look at it from a positive, neutral, negative standpoint. Always, whenever you get information, we call this the discernment triad.
yeah,
Everything we teach is in triads. Everything's in threes. The discernment triad is the most important thing I teach that I bring to the world. And that's what we do every day. Discern by thinking of everything you see as a positive, a neutral, and negative. You don't just see it from the surface and say, oh, look, this looks bad to me, or they look bad to me, or this sounds bad to me. Look into it, but also remember it could be a positive, could be a neutral, and it's nothing, or it could be a negative reason for anything you experience.
yeah.
So here's an example how we teach that. If you saw a woman being held by her throat in a park or in the woods, right, on a trail, what's a positive reason that could be happening? By a man. A man's holding her by her throat.
She got stabbed, and he's trying to hold the wound to stop the bleeding.
That's a good one. Yes, first time I ever heard that in 20 years. I've been asking this question. That's great though. That's a good one. What's a neutral reason? Not positive or negative. It's not. It's nothing. It literally is nothing. But to us, when we look at it, he is holding her throat. It's what it looks like to us.
He's reenacting a scene he saw in a movie with her. He's showing her this is what the guy
Very
did at the
good.
end.
Excellent. Excellent. And negative is he's doing something horrible, right?
Yeah,
So as you go to approach this person, these two people, you should remember those things and not assume it's a negative.
yeah,
And if you do that, you can avoid false positives, and false positives happen every day. So do lies. So that's why you want to get information. So, for example, if you find out he didn't have those body parts in his house, he never had those body parts in his house. Someone else put them there.
yeah,
So if you interview
yeah,
him, he's going to tell you that.
yeah.
So he's not going to be interviewed.
That's what's interesting about Candace Owens just did a show where she talked about Michael Jackson was wrong, could have been wrongly smeared in the media because he was
Mm-hmm.
never proven guilty of these things, and they just kept hitting him in the media over and over and over again that he was this person. And then she said, and then you come to find out that the people he said he hated on his hate list right after he died, they say that his will was changed, but he was demonstrably in another state when they said he signed the will with three witnesses, and then he died. Excuse me, he dies before the he just dies after that. And then everybody who he had on, like people who he had on his enemy list that he was trying to war against in
Hmm.
Hollywood, they were the
Yep.
ones that received the will change, that they got the assets to his estate.
Really?
So I didn't know that, and I was
Wow.
like, whoa, that's like a
See?
movie twist, and it's like,
Yeah,
they
but
smeared him
they were
all
this
over.
that movie twist is so crazy. That it sounds like a movie, like
Yeah,
the most intense movie ever. So the truth is much worse
yeah,
than uh than what you see on TV. That's the
yeah,
thing people need to realize too. The truth is so horrific
yeah,
that you don't really want that unless you're really into the truth. Like I am.
yeah,
I love the truth. I'd rather the truth than the narrative
yeah,
that these American axioms we have. Right.
yeah,
I don't aspire to that. I do research, and I started doing research in the '90s,
yeah,
and it's because I found out how ignorant I was every time I thought something, and I started doing research, and I started seeing the different types of outcomes in the research. You get use one source for your research, right?
yeah,
And you use cumulative data to then formulate an opinion, right?
yeah,
And that's how you'll know if it makes sense, right? But you got to have lots of data points. Look for different sources of that info, not just one source. When someone gives me information, I go analyze it, and then I go research the stories or whatever
yeah,
information I got from whatever the source was, and I look for at least three sources. And when you do that, you're going to be shocked at what you see.
yeah,
I was looking at I look at a lot of shootings, the shootings you would see like Aurora, Colorado, where the guy thought he's Batman,
yeah,
and so he came in there and shot everyone. So if you go and do research, you're going to find a whole other stories, so a whole other sets of stories that are not involved in any of the mainstream narratives. One of them was a guy was coming out of that place, coming out of the movie theater, running, and he was shot, according to a local newspaper, and he was killed because the police thought he was the criminal that was shooting people. And the guy, it was funny, is the guy that was shooting people that had a rifle was not shot. So a person with no weapon gets shot running out, but a person with a weapon doesn't get shot and taken into custody or stopped in the parking lot. Police officer said, "Hey, what are you doing? What unit are you with?" And he was like, "I'm not with a unit." And they said, "Well, what are you doing?" He said, "I'm just here." And he said, "What are you doing with a rifle?" He was like, "Hold on, put your hands up." And they took him into custody. He was literally having a conversation with the shooter. And this other guy, though, he ran out. But the reason why it was considered justifiable is because he had been in a fight with his wife, and he was at the movies with his girlfriend. And when he was in a fight in another place in the same county, um, in near Aurora, Colorado movie theater, he was at a date with his side chick, and his wife and him had a fight, and he had a domestic violence warrant for fighting his wife at his house, I guess the day before or something. So he was considered, according to that narrative, right? Because we never saw any evidence of a warrant, but anyway, that's what the statement was in the local news. But that narrative never came out. There was no information about this guy getting shot at the Aurora, Colorado movie theater.
he
But in
was
the
shot at
local
the
news,
same
there
time at the theater shooting, or a different time?
when people were running out, people were
Oh
running
wow.
out,
And he was running out
right? But no
too,
one.
and they
That's what the
looked up
news
his
said.
background and saw the report, and thought he was the guy or something, or what?
No.
Oh,
That was after. Remember, because you have
oh,
to justify why he shot him.
oh, they use that
So,
as the justification. Okay, I see.
but nobody ever even investigated if that's true or not, right?
Yeah,
They just assumed anyone who heard the story, and that's because he just to the officers that he when they saw him running out, he looked guilty to them,
yeah,
and as a result, he was shot. And the
yeah,
same thing happened when officers went to a mall. I think it was in Georgia,
yeah,
um, and shot the Good Samaritan who was had his back to the door with other people had their weapons out as they were looking into the mall because there was a shooting in the mall, and so multiple citizens were standing at the doorway taking cover, including this individual was a soldier on leave, and out of the 6 to 10 people that were sitting there with the rifle with their pistols out, right, their sidearms because they all gun permits.
yeah,
The officers thought this guy was the bad guy and
right,
engaged him. And then afterwards, when the other citizens were like, "Hey, that guy was with us. We're just walking in the mall when the shooting took place. He was not involved."
right.
They still for the next week said he was the shooter at the mall after he was dead. So then his father came forward. He was the chief of police in the next jurisdiction over from this mall, and he said, "That's my son. He's not a shooter. He's a soldier. He's on leave from the military, and he was shot in the mall." And they said, "Oh, no, your son was shooting the ball." They kept it up for like another 2 or 3 weeks, and they apologized.
Wow.
It was obviously right. So my point is, just because we hear something doesn't mean we need to accept that's the
Yeah.
truth. And you need to do research to figure out if that's right. And just remember that 9 out of 10 calls. Here's an example: 9 out of 10 calls that we get in the communities here in Detroit, we make people call police first. So you cannot call us for anything that's criminal and not call police first. We make you do that. When we get to the scene, we call police immediately. So we do not usurp authority. There's no vigilantism. We are working in a capacity to protect lives, save lives. And the first way to do that is get first responders there, if they can be there. Unfortunately, that's highly unlikely. So I created a first contact program because we're the first people in contact with gunmen. We're in Detroit. The first people going to see the man with the gun is going to be us. First people to call the police is going to be us and the people we train. And so we train school teachers, we train real estate agents, we train children, adults,
Yeah.
and parents. We
Have you run
train
into
police
issues with the?
officers.
Has the police run into issues when you show up, or you're always getting along, everything smooth?
Oh no,
With,
we get along great. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, absolutely. They back us up. We back them up. When I say back up, I mean, example, we don't. We try to be in the house or go in the house. When they go in the house, we would stay outside. So our uniform looks different. So what happens if you're inside of a house, clearing a house, and you see something that looks different, you can get shot. So we don't want to get shot in there. So we automatically acquiesce and allow officers to take over if they get to the scene, and they're and the citizen, what we try to do is get them to wait for the police too. We
Yeah.
tell them, don't go in the house. Think there's a criminal in there. There's a window broken. There's no reason to go in there and die, kill someone, or get killed when you just wait for the police, which will decreases time and decreases likelihood of get shot. Right.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
the truth is, 9 times out of 10, we're there within under 4 minutes.
Yeah.
When you call us in our communities, we're there 4 to 5 minutes, maybe the most. And
And what do? You call the police as soon as you get there, and then you go in and
if
walk
we see a
around.
crime, if we only
Yeah.
if we see a crime, but we can't call
Yeah.
until we see something that's criminal, and then we don't take an
So you're
action,
trying
and
to
then unless it's
de-escalate kind of situation.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah, our attempt is our focal point is to de-escalate if there is something there, right?
Are you
And
kind of
we
doing what
use
the
the fact,
guardian angels in New York City do, where they would come and try to make peace and solve a problem before it gets violent? Is that kind of similar thing? That's
well,
a little bit different, but
uh, no, I would differ in multiple ways. That's not honestly what they were doing.
okay.
That's what I thought they were doing, and that's not what they do. They're still guardian angels out here. And I think they're better now in terms of the discipline and things like that. But I heard stories from people who are guardian angels, and there's other stories out there. What happens is you have to really, especially with young people, you have to really, which I have many young fighters that are actual MMA pro fighters, and I have young men and young ladies, and this has been fed over 5,000 employees since 1995. And so what I can tell you is you have to really psychologically maintain a coaching relationship with your team members. And you have to stay on it. And you have to recognize the behaviors before they have an adverse action. And that's within your team, within your group, right? And if you don't have that coachability and that kind of a coaching infrastructure, you're going to have deviation naturally, right? But you won't be able to catch it in time. So you're going to actually have vile behavior from your staff, inappropriate behavior because people are inappropriate. Inherently, people do things wrong. That's just where humans are wired. It's not because they're cops or because they're a member of this church or whatever their religion is. It's humans. So the human is doing these things, and people are blaming gods, governments, and guns. But in reality, it's what people do. And so if we want to change the conditions, we have to change the minds of the people. And the way to do that is through education and giving them information, a full package of information, and then
Yeah.
let them make their own decisions on what they should be thinking from there. Like you might think it's okay to beat up women. Your dad did it, your grandfather did it. You just think that's the best way to treat women, and it's working out for you because the woman you're with, she seems to not fight you or anything. Well, there's lots of women who are doing that, and they're now in prison, unfortunately, because the men that were abusing them are now dead. And my point is, the point was that violence was the real problem, not men, not women. We need to stop the violence, and the violence starts with the belief system that righteous violence is right, and that we need that somehow by thinking that being violent will make us successful. So once you have this belief system, which we are in the United States, it's how we grew up. Okay, You were watching TV and movies. You were being programmed. I enjoyed Death Wish 1 through 15 with Charles Bronson. I liked it. That's not right, though. It's not a correct behavior to go places, to act very softly, and to increase the chances that someone's going to attack you, and then pull out a 44 auto mag and lay down the law. So the reality is, what you should be doing is creating a condition where there's no belief that there's a need or opportunity to commit violent acts against you or others. And so once you do that, you create a change in behavior. But it must be done in a positive way, otherwise the response will be negative. And so when I first started in Detroit 30 years ago, I had a dog, a rifle, and no money. And I was teaching on self-defense. My system I created, which blended no psychology. I didn't know any psychology. I was 25 years old. I didn't know anything about the human brain, right? So I learned all these things through failure, through bloodshed.
Yeah.
So if I don't want failure and bloodshed, if I like freedom and I like prosperity, that's not going to happen if we use violence as the method of change. Inspiration over intimidation is the key. You want to inspire someone to change. You don't want to intimidate them. So we want someone to move. We go talk to them. We stand next to them and we say, "Hey, how's it going, sir?" We greet them. We stand so close that they know we have no fear of them. We stand so close they can't pull out a knife or gun. We stand so close and face the same direction so they believe we're on their side, because literally we're on their side. So psychologically, we're not in front of them. If you're not in front of someone, you're not in a confrontational position. Proxemics is a huge part of how you're able to create a non-adversarial interaction to create a nonviolent outcome by design. This is what we teach both civilians and law enforcement, security, school teachers, because a lot of people that are experiencing violence are, by the way, not police. They're not police. Most people that are getting attacked by people today will not be police officers. They'll be school teachers, men and women at their own house, children on the way to and from school. So violence is part of our society, and if we look at it as a serious societal problem, we can attack the violence.
Yeah.
The way to attack it, to understand it, and then we defeat it by understanding that the key is to make sure that the psychological perspective of the perpetrator is affected, and that means you make them believe there's no opportunity. We call it opportunity denial.
Yeah.
Once there's a belief that you cannot do this here, then they'll go somewhere else, right?
Yeah.
And all you do is replicate that over and over again. So every community we go to, right? And unfortunately, because we're expensive, the companies, people don't hire us unless they have trauma, extreme trauma. There has to be a murder. There has to be, some horrible things happening, and there's going to be a response. So here's what people don't understand about the free market. The free market will dictate the actions of the people who have economic freedom. So when you have death and you have home invasion, you have suffrage, and you have people that have money, they're going to leave that place. So if you're the wealthy person who owns a $10 million, $20 million, $50 million building, a tall building, apartment building, condos, and you're about to lose your people, you're going to have to hire us, because we're going to stop the issue and save your people from leaving your business, right? They're going to leave. They're not going to shop at your store when women get abducted and raped at your store. They're not going to frequent a place that terrible things happen unless they have to. So a captive audience does exist where certain people can't move, like in certain neighborhoods where you're really poor.
Yeah.
But when you can move, and most people can move, when they find out people are being raped, robbed, and murdered, they will leave that building. They will leave that community. What we do is focus on the quality of life of the people there, which makes the rich people richer. If you don't let the rape, robbery, and murder happen, you don't have people leave.
Right.
And when people don't leave, everyone prospers. Even the stores in the area prosper.
Right.
Everyone prospers.
Right.
And what we get from it is this, not just paid. It is, the point is to make the world a safer place.
Yeah.
Through nonviolence. And that's what we're doing. And I found out many decades ago that in reality, if we're using force and violence to change behavior, that only works as long as we have the ability to use force and violence.
Right.
Right. So the other person, so people like to beat their children. You're beating them, you're beating your kids. It's working out great because they're like 3 feet tall, 2 feet tall, and 4 feet tall. And you're 5'9", you're 6 feet tall. And then all of a sudden you realize with your 5 kids you've been beating, they keep getting bigger. And as you're getting older and weaker, they're getting stronger. Well, guess what? they're going to return the favor. Whatever you did to them as children is going to come back to you when you are childlike.
Yeah.
Now you're a grandparent, great grandparent, and guess what's going to happen to you?
Yeah, I saw what Granny did with you when she threw that grenade at you in one of your videos, man.
Right. That's not even my grandmother, but still,
Yeah.
my grandmother was meaner than her.
Have you
But the
ever been
granny did
shot
give me
in
with
one
the
of your
grenade.
incidents? Have you ever been shot?
No, people tried to shoot me and just tried to stab me repeatedly. And so I got a lot of really good testing provided for me free by the community, um, uh, by people that volunteered to try to kill me and others on my staff. So
Was this?
without that feedback, I wouldn't know what I know. So
Yeah.
without people trying to kill me
Yeah.
and kill the people near me, that I wouldn't know the things I'm teaching is real.
Yeah. Now, for our audience sake, you've been doing this for years, and then what year was it that everything went viral with you online? Because I got a question for that.
Yeah, my wife, she said we should do something on TikTok. I was like, isn't
Yeah.
that for girls dancing?
Yeah.
It's not like a girls dancing channel or something. She was like, no, there's people doing other things on there. I was like, okay, whatever. I was already on YouTube and I had like 2,000 friends on there, 2,000 subscribers, right? 2,000. And she said, let's do TikTok. And I mean, we put up one video, which was the disarm of the barrel against your chest. And I showed a basic technique, which is to push a slide to the rear, right?
Yeah.
So you push a slide to the rear, the action's open and it stops the gunfire. And then you return the weapon and you have the weapon. And people have used this technique with no training. So, so police officers have been in situations. Civilians have done this. This is not something that I made up out of the air. It's just something that actually happens. People put guns on your body.
Yeah.
Okay, that's going to happen all day, every day, because that's how you control someone. And actually, when people actually shoot people, you'll see a lot of times they actually kill them. You'll see they're very, very close.
Yeah.
They could shoot them across the street. That's true. They just don't. And one of the reasons they don't is because when you have intent to truly harm someone, it's intimate. It's very close. You know, there's the intention is there. They don't shoot
Yeah.
from across the street. It's right here in front of you. It's within arm's reach.
Yeah.
And with the gun, part of the reason they're using this pistol is power and control over others, right?
Yeah.
And so by putting it to you, they can't spell PhD.
They're being
but they can
emotional.
rob any PhD.
Yeah.
Yeah,
They're
well,
emotional.
it's an emotional thing, right? They're killing someone out of emotion, right? There's no need, so they're deciding.
Yeah.
They've made a decision to kill this person, and they do it because. So key is to understand what I learned, which I did not know this when I started. I thought, logic. This is what we do as humans.
Yeah.
We look at things as us, right?
Yeah.
So when you look at a person, you think, oh, if he's a bad guy, he's shooting people for a reason. He's shooting people. I mean, he's mad at them, or they did something to him, or they didn't do what he said, or that's not true.
Right.
The criminal mindset, it has different categories, but the most important category that deals with death, that individual decides to kill people. He's there to kill you. He's gonna, even if it's after the rape, if it's after the abduction, they'll say things like, we do a lot of victims, right? They'll say things like, I'm not going to kill you. If they start talking about what they're not going to do, that's probably what they're going to do. They're going to try that. When they say, I'll kill you if you don't do what I say, they're probably not going to. So the brain works opposite. So the guy's like, listen, you can listen to me. Like does the Jeffrey Dahmer on you. You just come back to my apartment. We'll eat some soup.
Yeah.
Of course, the soup was other humans.
Yeah.
But, he was very calm in the face with police. He was, explaining that he was babysitting a young man and had to take him in the house. And right. So my point is that the way we think from watching TV is bad guys look bad and they talk bad and they attack people bad. And they're just bad. Right.
Yeah.
But the worst people, especially the ones that are going to take advantage of you, they're not going to ever look like that. They're going to look like good people.
They're going to look like politicians. Nice. They're going to look like politicians.
They are politics. They're being political. Also, the whole time they're deciding, can I get away with this? Can I get away with this?
Yeah.
And that's once you understand psychology of the situation, you can now increase your survivability. That's why we teach psychology, law, and skill in that order.
But that TikTok video went viral, right? And that's what I'm trying to get.
Yes, it went crazy.
And then
it has 159 million views right now on one
TikTok.
video.
And that's on TikTok, and I'm looking at that video of yours.
And it's on YouTube.
YouTube is got 160 million. So you got even more on that video.
Oh, it's went up. It's went up to 160 million.
And then you got 45 million, 28 million, 24 million, 23, 15 million, all kinds of views just on your shorts on YouTube alone. And I'm sure it's the same on TikTok and other platforms. So it went wild, right? You become kind of like a Chuck Norris type figure A lot of people. So I want to get into this. So when you became well known online, did people start trying to test you more and attack you? Did they do sucker punches where you're at the movie theater having a meal, stuff like that? Did that start happening?
That's what I thought was going to happen, especially when I read all the comments. Right, we
Yeah.
get 1,000 comments a day negative,
Yeah, yeah,
and
we're gonna get to that, but just I want to see the
and guess
real
what?
world reality. What
Guess
happened?
guess what? Uh, Absolutely not. Not
Wow.
one person in any state, not in country towns in Florida, not in country towns in Texas,
Yeah.
big cities in Texas, big cities in Florida, in California, and Los Angeles, Northern California. I've been all over these places just the past few years. I've been there before, but since social media thing took off, I got flown all over the place I still do these different types of promotions, right? So everybody knows I'm going to be there. They publicize it. And so for me, I'm already I live in a state of protective awareness,
Right.
right? Because that's what I do for a living, and we protect domestic violence victims, stalking victims, and crime witnesses. So those people that wanted to kill them became angry with me, and that started in the '90s.
Right.
So there's never been a day where I wasn't always living ready in the first
Yeah.
place at all times. And my wife and our kids, we always live ready. So for us, it's normal. I wasn't used to this level of aggressive, overt behavior. So I take it serious because people really tried to kill me. So
This is not
I did
related to
yelling
your star.
drive-bys.
This is not related to your fame. You're just saying people kind of
No,
kill
no,
you because you're trying to stop their bad behavior. Yeah.
correct. And so
Yeah.
that's for the past 30 years.
Right.
So all of a sudden, 2.5 years ago, I think it started 2020. Well, I was 2024, so it's 2021. It started blowing up 2021. The haters started to publicize hate. So I don't
Yeah.
know how you hate something that helps you, or you don't like it, just say, I don't like
Right.
it. These
Yeah.
guys, I was hate. They literally went to hate.
Yeah.
And what they hated was it's totally different than what they do. But I do this for real. So I put my hands on real people. I'm 5'9", 240 pounds. I put my hands on people that are 6'8", 380 pounds. And I have to successfully do this. If I'm going to get paid private sector. I will get, if I
Right.
got beat down, beat up, shot and killed, I can get sued for any of those outcomes, including the part where I win the fight and get sued personally, right? My company too. So, you know, and of course there's death. So people die doing protective service every day in this country. Security guards die every day, all day. Nobody cares. The
Yeah.
news media does not sort of tell you about all the dead security guards. So my point in saying that is that for me, bloodshed and violence is an everyday occurrence when I first started here in Detroit. And I learned ways to stop it, right, through my system. But for the threats, these are people threatening me. I mean, we're getting crazy calls, we're getting emails. The number of threats, unbelievable. And so I thought, man, I'm really gonna have to, you know, actually hurt one of these people and be ready to kill them. And that's the only thing I think is that because they're gonna come in the way they're talking is so violent, so violent.
You're talking
I was
about
like,
the
wow,
people that found you online now. You're talking about the yeah.
social media people, right? And I was like, well, it's just so many at the same time. It's like it's not personal. I don't know these people, but they want to kill me. They say, right?
Yeah.
For various
Yeah.
reasons of just helping people, right?
Yeah.
And what's so interesting is, eventually, at first I was like, trying to talk to him, like, hey, I'm not sure why you feel this way. What's going on? And what it was that people were telling them things that were not true. Like they were saying things like, you were you're teaching things that don't work, that are not real. And my instructor is a seventh degree black belt or something, and I'm a black belt and blah blah blah. Or I was in the military, police, whatever. And we weren't taught this. So what you're teaching is not true. Did someone go out and put their hands? Did someone go out here and actually protect families in the middle of the night in urban environment with lots of gang members? Did someone
Yeah.
get people they trained, they're
Yeah.
responsible for it, to go out and protect people in every community? Which is working in Detroit. We go out to country towns in Michigan to rescue people and protect them. Okay, so we go everywhere people need help.
Yeah.
And the first thing we do in any jurisdiction is go talk to the police department, let them know what's going on, and to see if we can get them to help. And if they can help with the situation. And sometimes they can. When they do, and then when they're not needed, we don't help anyway. We're like,
Yeah.
oh, okay, well, the police are helping you, so we're all set. And you just call us back. And sometimes because there's a miscommunication between the civilian and the police, whatever. My point in saying that is that we have a experience, and that experience is unique because no one really wants to be me. They don't want to go out and actually put the bloodshed work in
Right.
and actually protect people and get hurt and hurt people and see what happens legally. Remember, the police are coming in our
Yeah.
situation. We're going to make police reports for everything. So my point is that,
Yeah.
that when you look at the internet trolls and haters, those people are people that don't have experience in large scale bloodshed
Yeah.
like we do with gangs.
Yeah.
And they have good opinions, they have big opinions. But that to give you an example of it, right? On a positive negative scale, right? The video that you see has 160 million views, which is the gun disarmed to the chest. Okay, that video has 266,000 behind the scenes. You can't see this. Thumbs down. 266,000 thumbs down out of 166 million, 160 million views on that one video. Okay, on that same video with the 266,000 thumbs down, there is 6.6 million thumbs up.
Yeah.
So in reality,
who
people don't
started?
know.
But was there a big account? Who was? Because I have a theory about. You said it's not always what you see on the surface. I have a theory I'm going to get to in just a moment, but I'm going to get more evidence from you. Who started that?
Guy in Florida.
A guy in Florida. What's his name? Or was it a major name or just some unknown guy?
No, it's a guy who has a channel that makes fun of martial arts.
Okay.
Yeah. And
that started the negative memeing of you, right? Because even when I posted this, even when I told people on my audience who they know you, not all of my audience does because it's been a while, but you've been on my show for years. But when I said you were coming back on, I had somebody comment, a few say, his stuff's going to get you, he would get his A kicked if he did that in real life. And I'm like, where did this come from? Where does it
it's weird.
Well,
hatred and trollism is, essentially from ignorance, right?
I have an idea.
I don't like you. I don't like the way you look. I don't like, they used to really be overt with that. Why do you look like that? Why does your hair like that?
Yeah.
Right? Well, there was a lot of.
Do you think it's your
related things?
Do you think it's your uniform? Does that trigger them? That they feel like, Yeah.
Well, I don't know that they think I'm a cop, and I tell them 1,000 times a year.
Yeah.
I'm a private entity.
Yeah.
We are protectors. We don't enforce laws. Those are two separate things. And I'm very clear about that in all the videos. Why are we going to call? If I'm a police officer, why are we calling the police?
Yeah.
I tell you to call the police all the time.
Yeah.
So why would I be doing that?
What?
If I was a police officer, I'm telling you what we do as civilians. We just call the police, and then we only take action if there's exigent circumstances. In other words, if there's exigency, someone is about to do something that causes great bodily harm.
Right.
And then we take a step further, and that is we don't let the bodily harm happen. So even though the man wants to shoot his wife right now, his wife wants to shoot him back. And they both have their pistols out. They both have gun permits. They're both wealthy.
Yeah.
They're having a family argument that's turned into about to be gunplay. And the children out there, the mother-in-law screaming, and they both have their guns out. They're wealthy, and it's about to be a shootout. So my team member just got back from Iraq, but he's a Marine, and he was trained by me, retrained. He doesn't figure out which parent to shoot first. Instead, he de-escalates them.
Yeah.
Has to put their gun down, talks to the husband, and leads him back to the house where they talk, have a conversation, and the wife and the gun-toting wife and the children and mother-in-law all leave. He takes his gun in the house, and now everyone survived. The police got there about 10, 15 minutes later. And when they got there, there's no complainant, so that's over. But at the end of the day, if we would have waited one more minute, the husband and wife could have been shot, children shot, and that'd be in the premier community in Detroit, which would have caused property value to descend at the same time that people had lost their lives. But you don't have to wait, and you don't want to escalate either. You want to have the system that allows de-escalate, which is where my training came from. So the trolls and the haters on the internet, they don't know anything. They don't know about the libertarian anarchists, the freedom people that support us from what they found out about us from 2010, 2012.
Yeah.
So they don't know that group. These are two separate groups.
Right.
And they were fighting it. What's the freedom loving people found out I was being attacked, they started attacking these trolls online.
Yeah. It was a battle.
They were fighting for me.
Civil War.
They were fighting for me. Yeah. It was really positive.
But I have a theory. I think a couple of things about that. First of all, though, did you so I think what's interesting here is that you I want to talk first about this situation. Sean Strickland, he wanted to have a fight with you. Tell me a little bit about that story.
Mm-mm.
Is that right?
No, he didn't. He's
Is
just
that true?
talking. Yeah.
Was
No,
there
he's just
a
talking.
that was just all he was joking or what? What was the story there?
He's trying to get attention for his fight career.
Okay.
So he has to do that. He has to say vile things. He has to say whatever vile things about people's wives. He can, anything he can do to create. So when
But did
people
he
see that
say
I
he
have,
wanted to put a bound like $200,000 to have a fight with you or something? Was
that
that
was no, that was someone else. That was
okay?
another person. He wanted to give me two girls, and two girls and 50,000, and it was 200,000. And I told him that I'm married. I don't need his girls.
This
He
is
offered me two
Strickland or
girls.
somebody else you're talking about?
No,
Yeah,
somebody else, not another
yeah,
another person in that
yeah,
world,
yeah.
sports world. And Strickland, I met him in person in Vegas, the Shot Show. And what was
There's a
interesting is
video where he like you guys have a little thing and then you fall into a glass thing. What's that? Tell us
yes,
about that story.
the glass cabinet was full of guns, but the glass cabinet was not bolted to the ground. So when I stepped back, it fell down, and it literally blocked my feet. So as he's pushing, which he would not have been able to push me if that glass cabinet would have gone down. There would be no way to push me back like that. It's impossible. But because my legs can't move, it was played perfectly into the scenario he was trying to build. And I was showing him a technique and showing him a speed that was slow enough so he could feel it, but not fast enough to injure him. He's a fighter, so I'm not trying to break his bones in there in a gun show. We're just doing a demo, and I offered to show him the technique, if any technique you'd want to test or something, and and we met there specifically. He invited me to the gun show. I mean, to the not the gun show, to this gun store for promotion of the gun store. And so there's a bunch of fighters there, and then I showed up. The promoter, the owner of the store, and Sean Strickland both invited me to this gun store in Vegas, and that's how we ended up in the same place. That was not accidental. And
Yeah.
then we were doing technique, and they decided to do something else. And you can do that, but that's I'm
Was he
not
trying
going
to
to.
troll you when he did something, or what
Yeah,
was the deal there?
he was just trying to. Yeah, he was just trying to do something for the clicks, for views.
Yeah, yeah,
He didn't hit me. He could have punched me anytime. He could have punched me. He could have punched me there. He could have punched when we first met at the Shot Show. He walked up, and I don't know fighters. I didn't recognize him. I know Khabib, and I met him. Super positive. I know some other fighters, but like upper echelon guys, right? And at the time, I didn't know who Strickland was. I just heard there was a guy yelling on the phone in the desert, driving in a car. Say he want to fight me with knives or sticks or hand to hand. It doesn't matter. He wants to fight me. So there's a video of him saying that. And so I was like, I don't know who that guy is. But I'm dealing with 1,000 trolls a day. He just fits in with 1,000 trolls a day. And so when he walked up to me in Shot Show, we talked, and there was no hostility at all. So if someone wants to fight you, you know what they do? They hit you.
yeah.
They don't they don't stand there talking to you about other fighters. And one of my guys, my team is a federal police officer now, and he was a retired DPD guy, but he was um, an actual pro fighter that won King of the Cage in California twice. He's also an instructor at Detroit Police Academy for 10 years, about 10
Yeah.
years, almost 10 years.
Yeah.
And that's when we met at Police Academy. When my wife and I were doing training, adversarial training with the SWAT team with our team members. So for about 15
Yeah.
years, we did adversarial training with Detroit Police Department in conjunction with FEMA, and we would be the terrorists. My team members would be the terrorists. And in this case, my wife and I were both with Detroit SWAT team, and our job was to use the training for the program against our team members. And that's why I met this guy Hunt. His name was Hunt, and he was to this date, as far as we know, the only MMA fighter, pro fighter in Detroit Police Department. And then he went to California and won the King of the Cage twice. So he has history, but he fought Strickland before and lost to
Yeah.
Strickland. And Strickland, and him are cool. We're cool. And so we're talking. We have good conversation. He invites me to the gun store, and that person that you see on the internet is not the same guy you see in person. So what I'm going to tell you, if you want to fight, you would fight. You would just attack. There's no anyone can attack anyone. So that's not really what is going on there. What I can tell you is, I know a lot of people that attack people, and they know what they do. They just attack them. They don't talk about attacking them. They just attack them.
And you've
They
never
don't,
claimed that you're
speed
a
dates.
professional fighter. You're trying to
No,
save people from real defense
I'm a
situations.
survivalist.
Yeah.
So right. So
So it's
people
not
that are
quite
that are
it's like a apples and oranges to expect you
correct, 100
to
percent.
fight with these guys. It's like, I mean, this is a bad metaphor, but if you have a pit bull is trained and it's trained to fight versus a German Shepherd is trained to solve crimes, it's a different training set or something. You know what I mean? I
No,
mean,
no, no, no. It'll be yeah. I well, it could be that, but I would be the pit bull.
yeah,
And so the difference is that when you have a person who's sport fighting, they're not fighting. They're not fighting for survival. They're fighting for sport. They're doing everything that you're supposed to if you don't want to hurt someone. So the one that you would never do if you're trying to survive in the street against someone trying to kill you is do whatever a sports person would do because they're never trying to kill anyone.
right, yeah,
So when you watch TV, you watch movies, remember that there's a big difference between fighting for sport and fighting for your survival.
yeah,
You would never tell someone about to hit you. You never bow to them. You
yeah,
never give them respect. You never, before you attack them, the person attacking you, you
yeah,
never do before that. Make sure that you're at the same weight class.
yeah.
You never agree to fight on a certain day and time. You never agree what weapons you're going to use. You don't agree not to go in
Yeah.
their eyeball and,
So you
and,
would
and
not.
remove their eye.
So
You
you
would
would not
never
agree to
agree
fight
to anything.
so you would not agree to fight someone like Sean Strickland, right? Because that's just not your thing. You're
No,
not there to do
no, no,
professional
no.
combat.
No, absolutely
Yeah.
not. And I
Yeah.
and for sport fighting, man, you have to have a different mindset. Like
Right.
you have to know I could go and I could bite a hole in this guy's throat. But that's against the rules. So even though he's choking me right now, I know I can't bite his throat. I'm not like that. I'm not a sport person. You grab me, my everything I'm gonna do is natural. So I'm
Yeah.
going to go to the eyes, I'm gonna bite holes in the flesh, I'm gonna do whatever it takes to survive. And I'm not gonna think twice about it. I'm not gonna no hesitation. It's just like you flow as a boxer as
Yeah.
you're moving. Um, my brain flows the same way and legally. So
That's
all my actions are
yeah.
going to be in a legal order, but they'll also be very efficient. But
Yeah.
they're going to be designed to hurt the person if I have to hurt them and not hurt them at all if legally I
Yeah.
can't hurt them.
So
So
the difference between you and a Sean Strickland is your method has saved lives and it's actually worked in real life.
and my life and
Yeah.
many other people's lives,
Yeah. Many
and then
lives are
the training
alive
went to other
today.
people.
Yeah, let's put it clear right
The
here.
training
Many people
specifically,
are alive today who would not be alive if it weren't for your methods.
the
And you
training.
can't
That's
say that
correct.
about
If
fighters
I would
like
have
these
boxed
guys.
them, correct. No, there's lots of fighters that are dead. And that's the other thing is that
Yeah.
at first I try to be politically correct and just like okay, guys, I'm just gonna
Yeah.
not talk about that. But what I saw was they were actually dementing people. So there's some great fighters like Leandro Low, who's a great Brazilian jiu-jitsu artist. I mean, like one of the best of all time in the history of jiu-jitsu from Brazil. And this guy was amazing. And he went to a concert, which we have done many times. I have done,
Yeah.
and he was with his friends, and he was apparently drinking. And some kid came by and took his beer or something off his table. So according to his friends, he then went over there and used his jujitsu to take the guy down,
Yeah.
give him a lesson about stealing his beer or liquor or
Yeah.
whatever it was. And when he took him down, it turns out this kid had a gun. And this kid in Brazil, Sao Paulo, Brazil, pulls his gun out. This is where Leandro Lo's from Brazil. But he's a jiu-jitsu champion in the States a lot. He has lots of students here as well. So great fighter, great guy. And the kid pulls out a gun and shoots him in the head. And that happened when he was pulled back or he stepped back or whatever. And he was shot in the head by this kid and killed. It turns out that kid, and they report him as a kid, is a police officer. And that police officer is part of in what they call in Brazil a paramilitary. It's a military police officer. So there they have different levels of police, and this type of police officer is a paramilitary type police
Yeah.
officers, and that's I think there's two different divisions in
Yeah.
Brazil or something, but they're very hardcore, and they do Brazilian jiu-jitsu as well, but they
Yeah.
also do other things, including stab people and shoot people if they believe that they need to survive. And this is the difference. That guy would have lost Leandro Low every day of the week in jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
There's no way he could ever beat him.
Right.
But jiu-jitsu and Leandro Low being a champion can't defeat this, what they thought was a kid, turns out to be a police officer. The police officer cannot be beaten by this guy. And if he could have, then he would have. And if Leandro Low had trained with me, he would know, number one, don't fight over beer or liquor of any type. If you don't want your beer taken, keep an eye on it. And if they do take it, let it go and buy another one.
Yeah.
Or you have another option, you call law enforcement, call police, say,
Yeah.
hey, this guy stole something from me, right?
Yeah.
Use the laws, right?
See, that's what I
So
like
number one, there
about.
should have been a conflict over that.
Yeah, and that's what I like about what your philosophy is, and I'm not wanting to indict everybody who's in that fighter world or whatever, MMA fighters. I know there's a lot of variety, but the attitudinal
Yeah,
thing is kind of like this hot-headed, I got something to prove thing. I'm gonna be macho. Whereas with
but they're
your
being young
thing,
men, young men.
you're all
Yeah,
about nonviolence, de-escalation, be smart, be real. Let's tone the tone down. Let's do what we got to do to save
right.
lives.
Because death
Theirs
is
is,
real.
I'm going to fight you over beer. I'm going to fight you because you look at me. I've got something to prove. I'm insecure. Yours is, do whatever it takes to save lives and de-escalate both the person who's insulting you and yourself
Correct.
and everybody around you. So yours is the adult in the room. Let's be clear. Your philosophy
Right.
is the adult in the room. And that doesn't mean
That's
that,
right.
again, not everybody in the MMA world is that way, but I think there's a culture that comes
It's
from that
it's it's
world of these little
it's an
hot-headed
age. No, it's
guys.
not. It's
Those
not.
are the people
No, no, it's
trolling
not.
you, though. The people that watch that.
No, no, no,
Yeah.
no, no, no. It's everyone. I get
Yeah.
trolled by everybody. So listen, my trolls are every level of society.
Yeah.
So, but 10 times that number are my supporters. I mean,
Right.
I have never seen so much love in my life.
Right.
I have never seen so much positivity.
Yeah.
But the thing to remember about human behavior is human behavior. So
Yeah.
people are violent not because they're police officers, because they're people.
Yeah.
People are violent not because they live in this country town or in this
That's
city,
right.
it's because they're people,
Right. Human
right? And so
nature.
that's
It's
why my
human
goal,
nature stuff we're
yes,
talking about.
yes,
Human
stop
nature. And
playing
that's
into
what I
God's
like
stuff.
about your message.
Yes,
You're not trying to pigeonhole one party or ideology or one gender or race or whatever that. You're trying to
that's
say
right.
it's a human nature. The line between good and evil cuts through the heart of every man. Alexander Solzhenitsyn said that.
Yes,
So, I think
yes.
that's applicable to your philosophy.
And perception. So I mean, if you don't know the whole story and like you find out the whole story later, now you see different things differently, totally different,
Yeah,
right? So that's the other thing you got to do is remember to get all the facts first before you have an opinion,
that's right.
because a lot of times the information you get, remember this recency bias, guys. This is the most important thing I have to share about this construct, this part of this of the training, is that psychologically the perspectives that we have are all demented because
Yeah,
we watch TV and movies and the news. The news is telling us the narrative. The news is telling us what their paying clients want to see, and we think it's the news, as in sharing with us the most uh, recent and most spectacular, most interesting, and most egregious things that are happening in our society. And that's not true. The news media is not required to tell you the most of anything. So if there was 1,000 cattle being stolen from an area, they don't have to tell you that. And they want to tell you about one car getting stolen. They can just tell you that. They're going to tell you what they feel like telling you. There's somebody at the news station that decides what stories to report. And that's why you get the same media that you get when you watch it, because they know their audience will watch this, which means they can translate that into to dollars from
yeah,
their sponsors. Now,
yeah,
why you're not going to get information that is offensive is because that offensive knowledge or information that they share will destroy the economics of the TV station.
yeah,
So this is the problem with capitalism. This part of capitalism that makes it terrible, right? Capitalism is everything. All the different isms are required, right? You can't have capitalism. You can't have socialism. You can't have any of these isms without each other. They're all intertwined, right? But if any of them are out of control, anything's unchecked, it's
right.
horrible. So if you're only going to get credit
Yeah,
for having news that people like, you're only going to get the news they like, which is not
right,
full news.
right.
So you're going to hear stories about homeless people committing crimes. You know
Yeah,
what you're not going to ever hear? The
yeah,
stories of the crimes that people committed that were homed.
right, right.
So they're going to say there were 3 homeless guys that did something yesterday.
Yeah,
Well, there was 130 guys that did something that had a home.
yeah,
There were homeless people doing crimes yesterday. So what they're going to do is they're going to tell you a narrative like, oh, there's a person of this religion, a person of this ethnic
yeah,
group, a person of this
yeah,
whatever. But they're not going to tell you about all the other ones because, well, that's offensive to you, probably.
yeah,
If you view yourself as a person that's went to University of Michigan, and they keep telling you about University of Michigan criminals, but they won't tell you about Michigan State criminals. Well, everybody's going to be like, man, University of Michigan has all the criminals.
yeah,
No, it's not true. That's all they're reporting.
yeah,
So remember, here's what's dangerous about that. Just like when people are saying, my training will get you killed. And my training absolutely did get people um, uh, unable to continue to attack people because we use it in real life.
yeah,
So people tried to kill us because we went to where they were trying to kill other people. We would not let them kill people. So my training got tested. And it got tested not in a sport arena, but in a street and many streets over the past 30
Yeah.
years. So we protect today approximately 10,000 people in Detroit. Um, and in our 30 years, none of our people have been killed.
Yeah.
6 of my people got shot, one female, 5 men, and we stabilized their wounded and transported them to level one trauma hospitals. That's what you have to do, by the way. If you're ever injured or someone else is serious, you go to a level one trauma hospital. So you know where that's at whenever you travel. So something we teach people is, in being their own bodyguard is how to create conditions for your survival by understanding all things that can cause you not to survive, like
Right.
being at the wrong hospital.
Yeah.
But getting back to the point, um, when you think about fighters, that's a sport.
Yeah.
That's why there's lots of fighters that were murdered in this country and in other countries. Lots of
Yeah.
them, just in random situations, road rage. Um, there was a great martial artist in Brazil who was again in Brazil. This is a great martial because they don't report a lot of the local, like smaller martial arts. It's not a big deal. We don't really care in this country too much about martial arts like that, but it's a big deal in Brazil.
Yeah.
And so another champion, Brazilian jiu-jitsu champion. And by the way, there's lots of martial arts in
Yeah.
Brazil, not just jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
Capoeira being one of the most prominent, right? It's great art. It's from Brazil. And this guy was involved in a road rage incident in which he was physically walking towards the person that killed him with a gun. And the guy showed him the gun first and then used his helmet to block the jiu-jitsu practitioner off who's
Right.
coming at him.
Right.
And then the guy tried to take him down. He did take him down, the guy with the gun. And the guy with the gun shot him in the head 5 times and killed him.
Wow.
But if you did training, and this is what I saw in a statement online by jiu-jitsu masters from Brazil that are great. They said this is the thing is you have to train for this. If you want to stop gunmen, you have to train specifically for that. And that is part of the original jiu-jitsu that's taught in
Yeah.
Brazil, right? And even more
Yeah.
so in jiu-jitsu from China. Excuse me, from Japan. So jiu-jitsu is combative form, not sport form. It's all about weapons and injuring people severely and significantly. So understand the difference between sport training and survival
Right.
training
Right.
is that at the end, survival is the outcome, but not for everyone.
Right.
And so in sport, everyone lives, and it's designed that way. You're not supposed to go on the eyes. You can't strike the throat. You can't hit the back of the brain. You can't hit the occipital nerve in the back. You can't hit the medulla. You can't strike into the neck in general, period. And you can't hit the groin. You can't rip the groin. You can't hit the knees. You can't stomp the knees. All these things that we do in real life, right? Biting holes in people if you have to survive. That's normal. If someone puts something in your mouth, you bite it, get free, right? But in when you do that in boxing or any other kind of sport, you were made a pariah. And they got
Right.
mad at Mike Tyson for biting the ear, right? To stop
Right.
the fight.
Right.
In real life, that would be the beginning of the fight.
Right.
A
Yeah.
small bite to the ear is nothing.
Yeah.
Okay. My
Yeah.
point is getting those two things confused costs people their lives. People are dying
Yeah.
because they believe my sport has prepared me for this survival
But
situation, and that's
yeah.
not true.
I also
So many people are weak and kill people much stronger than.
I like one of the things you told me years ago that you said, we come in big with a big car and big things and big energy. But then when we meet the person, we do a paradox where we go really low and very, very humble and very friendly and intimate. And I love the paradox of that. I think that is so important. And it's something that
Yes.
that's kind of my philosophy too, is this paradox between this. If you go with big energy, you don't have to, you can save lives yourself and the person that may be in a bad mindset right there. So I think that's very intelligent. And that actually reveals a lot about the way the world actually works, by the way. This idea,
I wasn't like that.
talk
No,
softly and carry
yeah,
a big stick kind of philosophy, but there's something
yeah.
even more than
You
that.
never
Yeah.
know. It's wrong. That's wrong.
Right.
You want to do that. You never want to walk softly, carry a big stick unless you want to
Right.
kill people.
Okay, all right,
States,
but that's a dumb version
so
of what you're doing. What I'm
no,
trying to
no,
say
no.
is
What you just said is
having a big
that's the right one.
energy, but then having,
Yes,
yeah,
that's
yeah,
the reverse. That's what
yeah,
I teach, and I learned it through real life bloodshed.
yeah,
So when I was nice to people, individuals that were aggressive and violent, I would say, "Hello, gentlemen. Your situation, unfortunately, police, the families don't want people doing this. You're spitting on the moms and attacking them, and it's not, you're not supposed to do that. I'm talking nicely. They then think that's weakness, and now I gotta smash your skulls. But guess what? When I walk over there, aggressive, positive, hey, how you doing, gentlemen? They're like, hey, okay, man, okay. Hey, listen, guys, I need you to clear the stairwell so moms and their children walk through here, they don't get hurt. Okay, I don't want you guys to get in trouble. I don't want the police to come arrest you. rather than being accused of something you didn't do. So if you guys wouldn't mind, could you please step over the side so when moms and their children come through here, they aren't impeded. I understand you guys are out here sun tanning. I don't think you're out here drug dealing. You're just sitting in the sun with no shirts on. That's fine. It's legal. However, we don't want people to think that you're like, stopping women and children from getting into their house. And then the police get here and they got to arrest you for trespassing and other things. So it's better if we just step off the side, guys.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, okay. But remember when I first came there, they saw strength.
Yeah.
They saw me show them respect. And I asked them if they could come over. Then I inspired them by telling them, hey, the police will be calling you and get arrested, which is most likely not even true because they're not going to come there for that, right? So what happens typically is these men will be allowed to continue to aggress on the families until it's a felony.
Yeah.
Then they come, and then there's big court dates, and they say, look how terrible the place is to live in here. Well, if you go there ahead of time and you let them know that you can't spit on the moms and you can't beat them up because they won't have a relationship with you, then the young men know not to do that. You got to tell them ahead of time.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you destroy the property value. You get rid of tenants. You destroy the quality of life of families living in the United States in their own homes, paying taxes. And my point is this: why don't we just make the families safe before we have to enforce laws?
Yeah.
So it's not fair to blame police and be like, well, the police should be out there not enforcing laws. That doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
The point of policing is right now, is prosecutorial policing, is to find the evidence they've broken the law and take them to jail. That's what it's designed to do. There's no metrics for that. There's no metrics for prevention. No one's there. No, we don't give. And we should. We should give money to police departments, and police officers that prevent crimes.
Right.
So if you have a police station, a shift, and they have dropped their criminal activity, their crimes in their area, violent crimes, those went down. Guess what? Give them a bonus for that.
Yeah.
Give them $1,000.
Yeah, the financial incentives are totally whacked out.
Yes.
They're totally whacked out. I bet you've had some scenes, and we can't get into it now. We're running out of time, but I bet you've had some scenes related to kind of what Jesus did when he had the mob trying to murder the woman accused of adultery. And he said, he didn't come out and say, do not do that, because they would have a mob. They can throw their stones at him. He said, he looked down and started doodling on the sand. And then he said, let he who is without sin cast the first stone, which made them, it was like a social Aikido move. They started thinking, wait a second, what am I doing? Do I have a right to throw a stone, or should I, you know what I mean? So that social Aikido thing is really underpinning a lot of what your philosophy is, isn't it? This idea, right?
Yes. When we drive to neighbors, for example, we have all blacked out vehicles, even the windows are blacked out. That's so you can't see who's inside. You should not know who the person is inside the car, how many people there are. Is there a dog? Is there four men? Is there four women and men?
Right.
You have no idea. So we don't have intel coming from the inside of the car out.
Right.
Our lights are white, super bright white lights. So even if you try to look at that, it's hard to see, right? If you're a paying person that pays for our services, you're so happy to see these lights because you're like, oh my God, I'm safe. I'm protected. They're outside. They're 3 o'clock in the morning, 5 in the morning, 2 in the morning, 10 o'clock at night, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. Every night, we're out there because you see the white lights and they love it. I mean, I personally, I'd be kind of annoyed, I think, but I don't live directly in Detroit anymore. And when I did live in Detroit, which is most of my life after I came to Detroit, I only moved out of Detroit about 7 years ago. But before that, I lived in multiple communities in Detroit, and I never experienced safety that I didn't provide. I mean, personally, I had to provide the safety that I was going to have. There's going to be people breaking into my neighbor's houses. Home invasion 1. They know they're home. The one case, these criminals got caught at my neighbor's house as they're trying to kick in the door. These four young men. The neighbor 2 doors down from me, I see him go to their house, and the guy pulls out a gun and starts trying to kick the door, and the 2 go around the back. The homeowner has a video. He's got his gun out. They're out there with a gun, and they're still kicking the door. I've never seen him with a gun.
Yeah.
So the idea that if I have a gun, I'll be safe, it's not real. Many people with guns, several people I know that were law enforcement officers, they could bench press over 500 pounds, are not with us because of people that couldn't bench press nothing.
Right.
Okay. So what my message is this: training teaches you psychology, so you can read body language ahead of time, so you can also avoid violence by creating a condition where there's no adversarial relationship, right? But psychology is the most important thing we teach. Law, if you're going to protect yourself, but you don't know law in your area and how it's interpreted, legal opinions, precedent, not laws in the book, okay? It's two different things. So I teach law that is for your survival.
Yeah.
How to survive police traffic stops, how to survive police encounters by not creating an adversarial relationship with the police.
Yeah.
That's the first thing you got to do.
Yeah.
You
You
cannot
don't want
create
that.
an argument with police officers and create a positive outcome consistently.
Yeah.
So,
Don't argue.
what I would say is,
Yeah.
right, don't argue. Don't ever argue about anything,
Yeah.
right? More positive you have with criminals or cops, the more positive your life's going to be.
Yeah.
So don't create an adversarial condition with anyone. And then legally understand the law and how it applies to your actions. You
Yeah.
cannot use force just because you feel like it.
Yeah.
The guy down at the gas station in Florida who thought I could go disrespect this man's girlfriend
Yeah.
and children, and then he comes out and hits me when he does. I'm going to do this on purpose.
Yeah.
I'm walking with a big stick in my coat, but he doesn't know it. So when I disrespect his wife and children at 7-Eleven, or it was a gas station, I think, in Florida, and he knew about hold your ground, and he knew about, if you attack me, I can shoot you, right? He's from another country, but he knew this. What he didn't understand is, yes, but what you're doing to create the point of contact and conflict is also important. So if you're doing something that causes a action, that is you creating the action. So it's not self-defense. If you knew by doing something you create an offense, often, not always, but often, courts will look at you as the person who created the condition legally, and now the laws that were there to protect you will now be convicting you.
Yeah.
Because you didn't understand how the law applies.
Yeah.
So that's what we teach. How do you create conditions legally that you can prove?
Yeah.
And then how do you use the level of force required to stop the threat and not be perceived as a threat?
Yeah.
So examples, if you subdued someone, you got them in a chokehold, and the police get there, or a good Samaritan sees that, you might have been beaten by this guy. He might have attacked someone. He put him in a chokehold, and I've done this myself. And I'm not even holding. I'm just holding throat. I'm not choking him. When the police arrive, now the police officer does not know that you're just holding. Number one,
Yeah.
he doesn't even know you're the good guy. So the police officer is going to what? Come to protect. And that's how I discovered this being very important. As my skull almost got opened up, luckily some people stepped in to say that I was security at this place. This is in the suburbs. And I was holding this guy who turned out to be a professional hockey player, who just hit me in the throat and hit me in the face like 20 times before I took him down and put him into a rear naked choke on the ground, on the concrete, on the sidewalk. His face is bleeding profusely. So the other people, they believe I'm the attacker. And at the time, I didn't have a uniform. I was working at it was like a restaurant in the suburbs, and they didn't have uniforms for their security. So I was in plain clothes. All this is this guy holding this guy down. There was a pretty blonde wife who's screaming right now. It's saying, help! He's killing him. I'm killing him, right? And here's what happened before that. All I told him was, sir, the manager would like to talk to you because apparently they believe your bill was not paid. I'm sure it's just a misunderstanding. Could you go back and explain to the manager that you didn't steal the food and they just want you to show them the receipt and everything. Not a big deal, sir. I apologize for interrupting.
Yeah.
This guy went crazy, started calling me names and everything. I don't care. And he just hit me in the throat.
Wow.
And then hit me 20 times. But what before that, the wife or girlfriend or fiance, whatever, she said it was her fiance. So she was laughing and she was like, you don't want to, I was much shorter than this guy. I'm like 5'9", this guy was like probably 6'4". And he's very well cut up. And it turns out I heard he was a pro hockey player. And by his strikes, I can tell you he's probably a pro hockey player. He was feeding me blows really fast in the neck and face. And then things did not go well for him. But my point is this. Here it is. His two brothers and his wife to be were all laughing because they thought he was going to beat me up and I should just run away right now. And then now that he's on the ground and he's not doing well and he's totally under my control and I'm not squeezing his throat, I'm holding, right? The police, when they got there, they thought I was the bad guy. And I was about half a second, and you can't blame them, right? They don't know. And I see someone choking someone, the guy's got blood all over the sidewalk. And it looks like I'm just choking him, right? And I'm not. I'm making sure he has air, but I'm just holding him because I know I can't let him get back to his feet. My point in saying that is, if you don't know these, you don't have these experiences, you don't know that you can be attacked by civilians or police because of the way it looks, then you are not safe out here. And you have to have someone teach you that experiences dealing with gangs and dealing with violence and having to explain their actions legally to police when they arrive.
Yeah.
That's what we've done for 30 years.
I wonder, we got to wrap it up, but I wonder that some of that hate comes from a couple reasons. One, people I think, like you said, most of it's positive, but the haters, I think it's related to you're showing them that they can take responsibility for de-escalating things and defense if necessary, and they don't want
Yeah,
to take
you're right. You're right.
responsibility. They just want to have, the police do everything for them, and or whatever. They don't want to man up and
Well,
learn how to
they want to.
de-escalate
Yeah,
conflict.
there's that one.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And then
Yep.
the
And then
bigger
people that want
thing
to do
is
the other side.
that the other thing is I think there's probably forces that don't want the prison industrial complex to get harmed by the work that you're doing to influence people that they can solve things
There's that.
nonviolently without having things escalate to criminal
Absolutely.
conviction. So I think I bet you don't ever think that media things happen just purely organic. There's always astroturfing effects behind some of these moves
Oh
that want
yeah,
to make
it's
you
true.
look like you're not serious, because who are you threatening there if your ideas start to catch hold? So think about that. I think there's always an underlying
Well,
thing there.
the gun culture started looking at me as
Yeah.
defending the gun culture. So because at first I wouldn't show gun tactics, right? I started showing gun tactics because the online trolls,
Yeah.
haters were
Yeah.
talking about
Yeah.
things in a way that didn't
Yeah.
make sense. Like I have to use weapons in real life. I'm not like you. Okay, I'm not like you. I'm
Yeah.
in America, in the United
Yeah.
States. I've used guns in real life to protect civilians. I'm a
Yeah.
civilian,
Right.
and by the way, protect police officers in situations as well. So we've helped police officers that have been
Yeah.
violently accosted as well. And so um, this is real life for us.
Right.
So guns and knives are real for us. We
Yeah.
practice with our weapons. We train every week. So we never week we don't train.
Yeah.
So this is not we're not um, uh, uh, something you've seen before. There's no
Yeah.
one like us. I thought the Guardian Angels trained a lot. I didn't
Yeah.
know it was once a week thing, right?
Right.
Like Thursdays or whatever, your 1 hour a week or something. They do like a
Yeah.
volunteer thing, and I like the Guardian Angels, and they're great. I grew up watching them, and I thought, man, that's a great thing. I thought it was a full time event. I wish it was, that it was what I thought it was,
Yeah.
which was, a full time kind of job or something, right?
Yeah.
So when I created this, it was only because uh, I had to.
Yeah.
I thought you just report things to the police and the police
Yeah.
come, and then, and
Yeah.
I thought my job was going to be
Yeah.
teaching people how to legally defend themselves. That's all I wanted to do. So when I started in 1995, it was because uh, there was a disconnect between what I thought was living in the United States safely.
Yeah.
And I thought all of us should have that. And I grew up in Ann Arbor. In Ann Arbor, I was safe. I never
Yeah.
felt unsafe. That's
Yeah.
where University of Michigan is. And it was a great place to grow up, right? And I came to Detroit, and I thought, man, these people just need to know how to talk to police and to make reports.
Yeah.
As a private investigator, when I got out of the military, um, I I realized that people don't know the law. So how can we teach someone self defense without teaching them how to legally defend themselves?
Yeah.
If you don't know the law, you can't say something to someone legally
Yeah.
uh, consistently. You won't know what you should not say or do because the law makes something self defense or crime.
Yeah.
So if I tell you this is a self defense move and you use it, but you use it wrongly, you're now a
Right.
criminal, and I train you to be a
Right.
criminal. And I had many instructors, including some law enforcement instructors. You know, we never talk about the law. How do you use this technique legally? And what do you say when the police get there? And that's because none of my instructors, including law enforcement instructors I had, which were great, never actually been in a violent situation and had explained their actions to police as a civilian.
Yeah.
That's why. So it's
Right.
not something that they knew how to teach, but
Right.
yet we're teaching how to strike someone, how to choke someone, and then saying you can use this for self defense without teaching how the law works in your community, in your state, in your country, and seeing how that'll be interpreted. So you make sure you're using the legal system to determine which actions and how those actions be both taken and explained. If you
Fascinating.
can't articulate threat
Yeah.
properly, you cannot survive the courtroom.
Yeah.
What was the point of the training if you're going to go to prison? Because you could go on to prison without it, and you would rather what? Lose the fight than go to prison,
Right.
right? So, what was the point of fighting someone if you knew I'm about to put myself in prison? So, what you want to know is how to legally
Or get killed. Yeah. Yeah.
take actions that can be used to defend you in a court of law, as well as know the things that will be used against you. So, we teach
Yeah.
that in our system. How do you legally defend yourself? So, ours is actually in a we don't have a force continuum. We have a threat management continuum.
Yeah.
So you as a civilian are taught how to prevent threats through management. PTM
Yeah.
is what we call the training system.
Yeah.
Preventive threat management. So what do you say? What do you do? How do you use your camera? When do you call the police?
Yeah.
What do you say to the police? All those things are part of your training here.
Yeah.
as well as what techniques to be used under different levels
Well,
of a threat.
I can't wait to have you on some more often. We got a lot of things that we can dive into and look at some of the current events and see what's going on and get your thoughts on it. So I really appreciate your time,
Absolutely.
Dale Brown. It's always great talking to you. Your website, Detroit
You too.
dust.com. That's Detroit
Yes.
dust.com. We'll put it in the description. And I just got to leave it with this thoughts. You've heard it too, that I've announced that I've been entering into the wrestling industry. Now I'm going to be a
Yes.
manager, and my job is to be a businessman and make sure my clients are taken care of. But you understand, this is a vicious, savage world. Any kind of combat sports, things can go south. So I'm going to be consulting with you and learning what
Come up here.
defensive.
Come up to Detroit.
All right, I'll do that because I got to take care of
Do it.
myself.
Let's do it.
I'm
Let's
here
do
to
it yourself
sell.
here.
I'm here to sell matches. I'm here to promote my guys and my clients and make sure they're the world champions. But in the meantime, I understand people will take a
Yes.
shot at me too if I'm too close to ringside or
Right.
whatever, and I want to be prepared for that. So I'm going to go to you to
Right.
see what I could do for that.
If you like freedom and you like to keep yourself alive and safe at the same time, this is our training is specifically for people like yourself that want to have freedom, enjoy their life, have a good quality life, and avoid violence when possible, but
Right.
use the appropriate violence when necessary.
Yeah. There's some vicious guys out there, and I don't want to be caught unaware. So I know that you can
Correct.
help me with that.
Absolutely, 100%.
Thank you. I
Look
appreciate your
forward to it.
time, sir. Thank you.
You too, sir. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thanks.